So welcome to the 4th edition of the RDS Breeders Talk. It's great to be back here with you all. Before we get started, just thanks very much to those of you around the room who have helped make this happen again. Each year it makes my job a lot easier having you guys involved, so it's very much appreciated. A big thank you to Plusvital once again, not just for your support of this year's event, but this is your 3rd year to be involved. And obviously your support towards events that I'm involved in and events throughout the industry is much greater than just today alone. Your presence and your support through competitions and events has been growing and growing, and it is very much appreciated. So thank you guys for being involved again. Am I right in saying that there's going to be a QR code in the bags? Is it for, there's a competition down at the back, there's a Plusvital hamper.
Yeah, and so there's a QR code on the table there where the hamper is sitting. There's a bit more to go in it. The bone biome, the new product that I'll tell you about, is going to go in that as well. So if you want to enter the draw, just scan the QR code and give us your contact details there, and you'll go into the draw for the hamper.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So we're going to start off. I'm joined on stage with Rebecca Watson, the Chief Technical Officer in Plusvital. We're going to get in a bit of an insight into a few updates since we spoke this time last year. We're then going to be joined on stage by Dr. Marcus Swail, followed by Floris Van Leuken, and then followed by Willem Greve, who's finishing up in the 4-year-olds at the moment. So he'll be joining us in a short while. So he's trying to juggle a few commitments at the moment. When we finished the chat with Willem, then all 4 speakers are going to join me back on stage, and that's the opportunity where if you guys have any burning questions, do please ask. Don't be shy, and I'll try to ask as many questions, get as much knowledge out of these people while we have them in the room here with us. But please do, if you have a question, don't be shy, and I'm sure some of the guys will be around for a few minutes afterwards if there was something that you just really couldn't bring yourself to asking in public. So as I mentioned, Rebecca has joined us again this year. I think it was this time last year you were kind of a new face to some of the people that were here, and both for yourself professionally and some of the products and developments that Plusvital have had in the last year. There's been some extra positive developments. You, if I have this right, you have become the first registered equine dietitian in the country through the association in the UK. So congratulations on that. That's a recent development.
Thank you very much. That was a lot of work, but we got it over the line. And yeah, I'm proud to say that I'm the first one. I'm sure there will be others after me, but I'm the first one just now.
And it can only be a good thing if there are. You know, hopefully you'll set the way for people following suit in a similar fashion.
That's the thing. Equine nutritionists, there's a lot of experts out there, as I'm sure you all know, not necessarily just in nutrition, but there's a lot of experts in the equine world, some with experience, some without, and that, you know, there's a lot of claims on expertise, but having an actual register by an impartial third-party body, you know, I think that gives a bit of kudos to the qualifications, knowledge, and experience that I have. So yeah, if we can get more nutritionists on the list, it's just going to increase the quality of the knowledge that we're passing on to our customers and people who come to us for advice. Yeah.
Just before the event last year, there was a study had come out, and the study was focusing, and there's quite a few of you that are in the audience would have been here last year, would have heard us discuss this, but it was about the microbiome of a foal and how that affects their life and their career, their potential success going forward. And it was something that, I'd only learned about just this time last year, and then Rebecca enlightened us a bit further on this study, and it's both fascinating and terrifying, as I think I mentioned last year, about how something like that can have such an effect forevermore. And then when we were chatting recently on kind of what the updates are, what's coming through, what's taking your particular interest or focused at the moment, you mentioned that, I suppose, leading on to that or building onto that, Plusvital have got involved in a number of different, I suppose, projects, initiatives. Some of that is developing a product along these lines, and then some of it will be involving a more in-depth research project, I believe, going forward. So could you just, I suppose for anyone who wasn't here last year, will you just briefly touch on what that, when I'm referring to the microbiome, what that was in relation to, and then where does Plusvital come in now, 12 months later?
We'll give you a roundup of it for anyone who wasn't here last year. So the microbiome, what we're talking about are all the microbes, or all these different bacteria, it's fungi, it's different populations of microbes in the horse's gut, which are there for a reason. The horse is a hindgut fermenter. They depend on this bacterial and microbial population for them to be able to digest their food efficiently and properly. But the horse is, so much of our horses are actually gut and intestine, and if we can keep that right, if we can keep the gut healthy, we can really limit and lower the risk of other problems in our athletes, in our breeding stock, in all of our horses. A large amount of the immune system is in the gut. More than 80% of the immune system is in the gut. So again, gut health is very, very influential on immunity, and that's, you know, just everyday coughs, colds, things that they pick up in the environment, especially when they're going to shows. So gut health is really so much more than just trying to reduce gastric ulcers, which everybody talks about. So yeah, this study was done last year. It was published last year. It was done in the years prior to that. Over a period of 3 years, they studied a population of thoroughbred foals because they are very similarly managed. So you're able to rule out a lot of variance in the results that you're getting. They followed a population of over 50 foals over a 3-year period. And during the first year of those foals' lives, they measured the fecal microbiome. So they took dropping samples at regular intervals 9 times over the first year of their lives. And they studied the diversity of the population of microbes in the fecal samples. And this gives us an idea of the diversity of the microbiome in that particular individual. So what they found when these horses grew up, they went to be broken, they went to the track and they raced. And they found that individuals that had a more diverse microbial population in their gut during that first 12 months of life had higher success on the racetrack. One of the things that this is probably down to is they found there are certain microbes that are linked to soft tissue disease or soft tissue pathology, if you like. One of them was linked to respiratory health. So they're able to tell by the diversity or by the particular genome or the type of bacteria that's in there, they can link that to health of the horse. And this is like 2-3 years down the line. So that first year of their lives is very, very important for them to be healthy. It's not really rocket science because, I mean, a healthy gut is a healthy horse. So the healthier your horse is, of course, the better it's going to perform. But things like antimicrobial use in the first year of life, things like prophylactic use of antibiotics, which I think we're getting much, much better at not doing. But when I was in practice 20 years ago, that was very fashionable. And now we're finding out that that probably wasn't a good thing, you know. So whatever we can do as breeders, owners, horse carers to try and get this gut in our young horses right, is going to give them the best start in life and potentially, you know, increasing their chance of success later on when they come to become athletes. It's known, there's a university in Cork actually have done a lot of looking at human microbiome studies. They did a famous study a few years ago with the Irish rugby team and looking at the diversity of the microbial population in the human gut. And it's well known that elite athletes, such as professional rugby players, have a more diverse microbial population in their gut. So as you alluded to, we're planning to do a bit of a study next year looking at things like the fecal microbiome in horses that are taking our new supplement, which we've developed. So maybe I'll talk about the supplement first. And this obviously came about because of the study last year. Gut health is a particular passion of mine, and I'll get on my soapbox and talk about it for a long, long time if anyone has any questions after. But yeah, we came around bone biome. It's very common in Ireland and in other countries across the world for the broodmare to be supplemented with a calcium supplement, particularly in the last trimester of pregnancy, because that's when the fetus does most of its skeletal development. And the idea is if we're supplementing, ingredients for bone, we're trying to enhance the skeleton that this fetus is growing inside the mare. So what we thought is, why don't we combine gut ingredients with a calcium or bone supplement? And this is how bone biome came about. The foal inherits its microbiome from the dam. So it's very, very important that the mare has very good gut health prior to giving birth. And that's going to give the transfer of the microbiome to the baby. And that's going to give the baby the best possible start in life with a nice, healthy, diverse gut microbiome. So this bone biome product is fed to the mare for the last 3 months of pregnancy, and we're going to be having the dual whammy of increasing her the skeletal development of the fetus that she's carrying, and we're also going to be enhancing her microbiome prior to her giving birth. So the study that we're proposing to do, we're going to partner with some studs, and we are going to look at something similar to what the study in the UK that was published, taking fecal samples and looking at the diversity of the microbiome in those samples. What we hope to find with our ingredients is that this is going to positively enhance the microbiome of the mare after her taking the supplement. It'll be interesting to see how long she needs to be on the supplement before we can see a difference. Like maybe 3 months is not required. Maybe there's changes in a shorter period of time. We don't honestly know yet, but we will find out by looking at this in more depth. And then the other things, if we can enhance the microbiome, as I said, immunity is something that is very closely related to gut health. So we're interested in looking at things like colostrum quality and immunoglobulin transfer, so IgGs of these foals that are born, seeing is there a positive effect. So a lot of the big studs would routinely measure this. They'd routinely be measuring colostrum before mares give birth, and they would have a record. So this is what we're hoping, that they already have the information from last year and years gone by, and we can compare that after we've been feeding this supplement. So yeah, we've had a lot going on, but this is it's a product that I'm very excited about. There's not another product like that on the market at the moment. So I think it should be something that the breeders receive with open arms.
Just on that, in terms of partnering with the different studs for the research project, out of curiosity, will you seek out specific studs, larger studs, or is that something that, whether there's people in the room or listening to the recording that maybe have operating at more scale, are you looking for additional studs to partner with, or is that something that you'll?
Yeah, we're still open for additional studs to take part. Ideally, what we're looking for studs with more than 10 mares, because more numbers makes the results more meaningful. But we're going to cross pair these. The mares that are taking the supplement will be compared to a mare that's not on the supplement, so that a mare of similar age, similar gestation, and you've got a control. So you've got a horse that's not on the supplement and one that's on the trial as well.
Thank you very much. At this point, I would like to get a round of applause for both Rebecca Watson, the support of Plusvital, and we're going to welcome Dr. Marcus Swail to the stage. Thank you very much, Rebecca.
Thanks.
And just, again, to reiterate, whether it's when you have another opportunity, when Rebecca joins us back on stage, whether it's afterwards, I always just like to remind people or give them a little nudge. If there's someone, whether it's an equine professional that's working for one of the many companies in the industry, whether it's a top vet or some of the breeders or show jumpers, just do take the opportunities when they're presented to have a chat, get some knowledge, or I'm sure any of the Plusvital team are very accessible should you have burning questions in the weeks and months ahead. So yeah, don't be afraid to to reach out, whether it's tonight or afterwards. So over the years, whether it's bringing horses for sales vettings at Marcus's practice, which we'll touch on, or meeting you in various capacities at competitions and championships around the world, even if it's just 5 minutes of a chat with Marcus, you always go away thinking. He is someone with an incredible depth of experience and insight or oversight on the horse world. And often we probably don't maybe take the opportunities to engage. You know, it's maybe a stressful time when people are bringing a horse up for vetting and there's a lot of money on the table, and maybe people don't take the time to ask the questions that they might have, or things like that. So I just thought it'd be a great opportunity to get Marcus in front of you all and really have an opportunity to touch on, I suppose, some of the services that you offer. What we were talking earlier in the chat during the week was a lot of the time in the horse world, I feel there are terms thrown around, there's things that we hear, and a lot of the time I think people feel they should already know what that term is, they should already know what that process is, and they don't ask. So I'm hoping this is an opportunity where I can touch on some of those things, and we can get a greater insight into the professional life of a vet like Marcus, some of the processes, some of the terminology that's involved. Marcus was the co-founder of EquiVET, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with. He is an incredibly highly regarded and respected vet in the industry and a go-to person for many people, right through from breeders to people operating at the top of the sport, at home and abroad. And as well as operating out of EquiVET in Kildare, Marcus is also a key figure in the various Irish teams over the years. And sometimes, again, we see what happens in the ring, but we sometimes don't get a chance to see all the goings on behind that. So over the years, Marcus has been the team vet for Team Ireland at, I think, all the Olympic disciplines, showjumping, eventing, and dressage. And in probably more recent times, it's primarily been around the senior showjumping team, which I'd like to learn more about in a short while. You've had various different involvements and outings, but I was wondering, just to get things started, we have vets in the room. We have a lot of younger vets, more experienced vets, and I know there's going to be many more watching in. Could you give us a little bit of a flavor on some of the key steps in, I suppose, the formative parts of your career to get from the stage where you go from graduating as a young vet hungry for knowledge to being one of the go-to vets in the industry at this present time? What were some of the key steps for you, Marcus?
So the formative stuff preceded my university time. So the formative stuff would have been as a rider, riding ponies and in shows all around the country and in these arenas beside us here. And you know, I was lucky to have had good ponies and had a very successful pony career. My riding career peaked when I was about 15 or 16 there, and then I left it to my brother Connor after that to pick it up and run with it. But I was lucky to have won lots of times in that main arena there. There used to be I'm starting to blow my own trumpet here now already, but there used to be 3 shows every year for those with a long memory. There was this show, but there was a spring show, which was like a kind of an agricultural show, and there was the November Indoor International over in Simmons Court as well. So we used to get 3 outings, and they had a really good 14 too, and the spring show was good because you got 2, one over here and 2 in there, and there was one year that won the whole 3 of them. So I won a medal, a team medal, gold in 148s as well in 1984, for those that have a very long memory. So my formative time was as a rider, and I suppose the reason why I'm starting there is I can remember having a 13-2 called Calamity Jane, who got quite a bad colic one late afternoon, early evening, because we all know that horses don't get colics during the day; they only get them out of hours. And you know, I was only a wee fella, and it was a you know, I can remember being really quite, you know, how everyone gets connected, has a connection with their own horses, and you know, there was a lot of uncertainty, and colic is, you know, maybe a little bit like what you were saying about terms that we all take for granted and are a bit afraid to ask about. I mean, when I'm 13 and my pony has colic, and it's one of those things that it's a word that you hear lots of people using, but you maybe don't understand that well yourself, but you know that some horses that get colic die, and you know, it's a concerning time. And anyway, the vet came out. It was a colleague who's no longer with us, unfortunately, Bruce Steele. And Bruce came out. He examined my pony in a calm, thorough, measured fashion. He told me what he thought was wrong with it, or he told me, you know, his assessment was that he wasn't too concerned. He was able to give her some medication, and she relaxed and got better, and he drove out of the yard. And he always had a fast car, which was a help as well, because I've always had a weakness for a fast car. And so I remember looking at him thinking, I wouldn't mind doing that job. So that was kind of where it started. And then, you know, one of the challenges in the profession, which continues to this day, is that it's, you know, it's really academically difficult to get into. So, you know, that was going to be the next struggle. But anyway, I found my way to vet school, and because of my background in competing, and my background in horses, I always had I always felt that I was going to be a horse vet. And you know, then as I started to understand that the idea that you could look at a horse, assess it, figure out what, I suppose the orthopedic side of it was particularly appealing because of my competition background. The idea that you could look at a horse, figure out what was wrong with it, treat it, and get it back up and running again was an interesting concept, an attractive idea to me. So, you know, I think in life we're all drawn to things that interest us. So that's how it came about. And my first job actually was a mixed job where we did a bit of cattle, a bit of horses, and we 3 small animal clinics as well. So I didn't initially go straight into it, and I actually feel that I enjoyed working with the farmers, and the small animal stuff was okay, but I felt that was it was really good practice and really good colleagues in Dumfriesshire in Scotland. I went to university in Scotland, so that was a good grounding. But my next job was nearly all horses, and then I went to Australia for a little while, and I came back to the Curragh. And then, you know, you just when I was in the Curragh, I used to do a little bit of everything as well. I used to do repro stuff, and but I started doing the competition work and the team work, and I was having a hard time making that fit into the structure of a normal practice. So that's when I decided to do my own thing in 2008, and it just has. I'd like to say I woke up one day and decided this or decided that, but it just has sort of grown organically, I suppose.
And it's something I hadn't really thought about, but just hearing your motivations for starting EquiVET, even when I've been there, actually, how you describe things and maybe how you approach things professionally, kind of on reflection, EquiVET is quite a representation of you and how you do your job. When you arrive, it's very professional, it's very calm, it's very well set up, it's thought through. And even though you can go there as a slightly kind of uncomfortable or stressed breeder or owner, hoping that you get to the far side of your vetting in a good way, the whole thing actually is quite in keeping with, I think, you as a professional in the industry. But could you give a little bit of insight? Because even though it's busy anytime I've turned up, it's, as I said, it's always very calm. But what takes up most time when you're not traveling around with the teams? What takes up the most time in terms of the services that you offer at the moment?
Everything. I mean, there are days that, I mean, the reason why I started doing what I'm doing is because, I am tired of the repetitiveness and the monotony of some of the other stuff that I was doing. And now there are days where I actually wouldn't mind just seeing a foal with a temperature or a horse with a cut to put a few stitches in or something like that. Whenever a horse comes in that's laying behind and 4 other people have looked at it and can't figure out what's wrong with it, and you're trying to navigate your way through it. But what takes up the most time, pre-purchase exams are time consuming, but there's a fixed structure with those. I think there are, and most lamenesses you can navigate your way to a diagnosis in one bite or one, like we usually leave, I like to leave an hour and a half per horse. So each appointment is about an hour and a half, and that's to give you reasonable time to figure out what's wrong with the horse. And part of one of the frustrations for me is that you'll have clients that come to you and they'll have been to a vet and they'll have looked at their horse, and maybe the vet even might have had a good idea what was wrong with it, but the client left not knowing any more than when they arrived. And I feel that it's incumbent on us as a profession, and it's incumbent on me to, that the client comes, you figure out what's wrong with the horse, but it's also important that the client understands what's wrong with the horse. So you have to stay away from language that is cumbersome and bamboozles people, and explain things in a reasonable way. But there are some lamenesses that I describe to people, that there are some lamenesses that you need to think of them as a process. So you might have to look at the horse twice, 3 times, 4 times before you can really get to the bottom of it. So some lamenesses are easier than others, but some of them you have to wrestle with them for a good while before you can figure out what's wrong with them.
I personally really appreciated that part of the process, and I know there are other vets around the country, whether it's on pre-purchase examinations, whether it's in reproduction, that are very good for giving breeders or owners that time, because even my last experience at your practice, I did feel that you really took an effort to explain all the different elements. I recently had an experience with another vet that's in the room here on the repro side, where again they didn't have to, but they just took the time to explain all the aspects of what they were doing, why they were doing it, why they were looking, and I really appreciate that.
I think they do. I think they do have to. You think they didn't have to, but I think we do have to. So I think that's you're not doing your job properly unless that's part of what you're doing.
Because again, back to the terminology and the process and the fear of asking the question, even using my own example there, where we were deciding how to proceed, and the range of options that were available to us in terms of vetting this horse, and following the clinical, you're at the X-ray phase, and you have multiple doors that you can go through, and if you're not overly experienced in terms of that process, it can be daunting knowing what's the right thing. You're thinking of your money, you're thinking of the process, you're thinking of your potential customers. This is a really simple question, so apologies to anyone who is vetting horses every day of the week. But when it comes to X-raying, it's the thing that a lot of us are weary of, allergic to in the horse world, and it causes so much confusion. It causes so much frustration at times. But somebody gets to that stage, they're trying to decide how to do an assessment, particularly on a young horse. Maybe they're not that far down the track on the production end. From my limited understanding, you have your basic screening set of X-rays with the terminology we were using the last day. You have your American, or you have your European set, and you have your American set. And again, we can hear these terms and we can throw them around. But what's the difference?
So I mean, I think another part of my job is to make the best use of your client's money, and I think in this particular instance, you're always trying to balance the amount of information that you get against the cost of getting that information. So you have to try and fit the screening set of X-rays, which I suppose let's make that the umbrella term for what we're doing. You're trying to fit the appropriate screening set of X-rays to the horse that's there, and you know, I think that as a generalization, let's say, you know, if you have a younger horse, so say you've a 3-year-old and you think it's a really nice 3-year-old. So, you know, I think at that stage, you want to just, you know, I think one of the things that I would like people maybe to take from this evening is that if you're a horse producer, certainly with your, you know, all of your horses are, not all of your geese are going to be swans or whatever that phrase is, but anything that is nice, you should be making it your business to produce it in a professional way. And, you know, a lot of that will be around, you know, around handling and so on. But, you know, when it comes to the imaging side of things, if you have something that's nice and it's a 3-year-old, at that stage, you know, you don't need to X-ray it to death, but you do need to understand what you have in terms of, at that stage of their life, what you're trying to establish is whether they have, and you know, this is where we start getting into language that we need to explain, whether you have any developmental problems. So like, that's one of those words, so like, what's a developmental problem? So, you know, that's a problem that has happened when they're growing. And in the main, we refer to a thing that mercifully we shorten to OCD. The full name is a bit more cumbersome, and OCDs are in the main things like chips and what we call cysts or subchondral bone cysts. So, you know, we're a great profession for giving simple things fancy names. So a subchondral bone cyst is, subchondral just means under the cartilage. So a subchondral bone cyst is a little cyst just underneath the joint surface. So as a 3-year-old, let's say, you're going to your horse, the horses develop these OCDs at a very specific window of their lives, when they're weanlings, basically. So when they're between 9 and 18 months old. So there are little mistakes that happen when the horse is growing, and these can take the form of little chips or little fragments in the joint. Sometimes people have the mistaken idea that if a horse has a chip in its joint, it's because it got a bang or it was a traumatic thing. Almost without exception, chips in horses' joints are little mistakes that have happened when they're growing. And they tend to be more common, these mistakes, in horses that are big because they've had to grow quickly, and less common in, you know, you wouldn't see them so much in ponies, for example. And it's the same thing with cysts. So at that 3-year-old stage, to, in a very long-winded way, answer your question, all you're basically looking to do to get the best bang for your buck is to establish whether you have any OCDs effectively. So if you have any chips or any cysts, and you know, a handy number of X-rays, maybe 16 or 18, will navigate you through that. And then let's go to the other end. You have a horse here this week that has won the 7 and 8-year-olds, and Willem Greve down at the back has taken a fancy to it there. I think I seen him coming in there, did I? And he's given you €2 million for it. Is that a fair price, Willem? Maybe he go halfers with Jan, a million each. And so that horse is going to be subject to like a really thorough set of x-rays because it's had a certain amount, it's a little older, and it's had a reasonable amount of jumping at a high level. And maybe Willem is going to sell it for €4 million next year, so he needs to be sure that his x-rays are all okay. So that horse, you would employ what we would call an American set. So what's the difference? So the first one, we'll take, the problem with x-rays is that you're taking a 3D thing and you're making it into 2D, and we get around that by shooting different angles. So the difference between the first set and the American set is the first one, we'll often take one view of each fetlock, 2 of each hock, 2 of each stifle. So you limit your views to the ones that are going to allow you to see the developmental problems, whereas in the older, more valuable horse, and I use a 7 or 8 year old, maybe that's not even a good analogy, let's say a 12-year-old, and an older horse, you will take so you'll take 4 of each fetlock, 4 of each hock. Sometimes the Americans will ask you to do 3 of each stifle, and you'll do maybe their back and their neck. So, one of them is going to be in around 20, the other one is going to be closer to 50. You don't get twice as much information from the 50 as you do from the 20. So, I think that the short answer is fit it to the horse that you have and get good advice on it. But that might give us sort of just a broad understanding of the difference between them.
There was something you said that last day that I was with you that I just thought was interesting, and it was about, I suppose, the technology side of things and the technology developing faster than, I guess, the human ability to interpret that. It was specifically in relation to necks. Would you mind saying a few words on that or explaining that? Because again, it's this, when you're trying to decide, do I X or the back, do I X or the neck? And a lot of times we're not even fully sure, as breeders, we mightn't be fully sure why. It's just that we're here it being spoken about. Could you just talk a little bit on what you were referring to around the neck X-rays?
Yeah, well, I think I might start by saying, start by saying the why, and not just about neck X-rays. I mean, like, why even bother vetting a horse? So, a pre-purchase exam is an exercise in risk assessment, and there's no such. I often say to clients that there's no such thing as no risk when you're buying a horse. So you're not looking for no risk, but what you're looking for is a horse that represents a normal risk. So maybe a better way of looking at it is what you're trying to avoid is an increased risk. So there'll be things in the clinical exam that are important in that regard, and then why do we take X-rays? Because that's part of the risk assessment. And to address your point about the neck X-rays, what I had said to you was that I think that one of the good things about my profession, or one of the engaging things about the profession, is that there isn't a finite amount of things that you learn and then you know everything. There's a lot of really bright people in the profession who are always pushing the boundaries and coming up with new things, and that's one of the significant positives of the job. And I suppose the most recent example of that is imaging necks. Why? Because we've, over the last 5 years, I'm going to say, as a profession, we started getting our equipment improved, I suppose, what was the starting point, and then our ability to image necks improved. So suddenly we have, we have the ability to take really nice images of necks. And I'm not just saying this because he's in the room, but some of the nicest neck X-rays that I have seen actually come from Willem's dad's practice, the water molding. I think they must have a big fixed unit, but that clinic produces some of the best neck X-rays that I've seen. So suddenly we can see the neck in detail. But then the next problem is that as a profession, we look at it, we look at it and we say, okay, so now we can see this, but what does that mean? So the best example of it was in the beginning, lots of horses, the joints that tend to give trouble in the neck are the ones at the base of the neck, because they do carry most of the weight. So you can imagine the joints at the top of the neck don't have as much in front of them, but the joints at the base of the neck have, the whole of the horse's neck and head. So those joints often become enlarged. And then the concern was, so, enlarged is, basically like if you get remodeling and enlargement of a joint, it's a degenerative change. But the concern was that, that was an arthritic change and that was an increased risk. But then over a period of time, as people started doing studies on it and as we started to understand it better, we came to realize that a significant percentage of horses have enlargement in the joints at the base of their neck. So then everyone starts getting a little more relaxed about it. And unfortunately, that's a process that has happened. We're talking about necks. Whenever I was riding at this show, everybody was talking, like horses that were struggling with their feet all had navicular. It was one of those words, navicular. Everything that was struggling with its feet had navicular. And then, the difficulty was that we were able to take x-rays at that time, but a lot of the discomfort that horses get in their feet, you can't see on x-rays, and you need a thing called an MRI to be able to understand what's going on in their feet properly. And then the next thing, we started MRIing horses' feet, and well, two things happened. The first was, it was like somebody opening the blinds, because suddenly we could see all these deep flexor tendon injuries and bone bruises and collateral ligament injuries and all sorts of things that we realized that navicular is about 10 different things. But then, it might take us as a profession 2 or 3 years to disentangle all that. So, it's a really positive thing that we're able to navigate our way through these things. Maybe backs were the previous thing before necks, but there is a bit of a teething period with it, which I feel we're at the end of as a profession now with necks. But it's unfortunately something that has to be gone through for us to understand it properly.
I suppose the problem when we chat, it was like the other day, I think you were en route somewhere and I stopped you for a minute to ask you some questions, but each time I ask a question and get the answer, I end up with more questions. So to respect the time, I'm going to save some of the questions for the Q&A. But a lot of people, say for example, when you're watching an Aga Khan here or watching a championship, if we're lucky enough to be in person, or watching it online, and the riders making their way down to the arena, and you see this crew coming behind, and there'll be a team manager, and there'll be their support crew and the trainers, and usually the vets in the mix there. You've worked at multiple different championships now for Team Ireland around the world, as I mentioned at the beginning of this. Is there a way to kind of simplify what your role or responsibility is as team vet when you're away at a championship? I know each championship will pose different problems, but what are the expectations of you, we'll put it that way, when you're heading off to a championship?
Is there a way to simplify explaining what I do? No, is the short answer to that. But one of the ways that I like to describe it, it's really hard to describe it. One of the ways that I like to describe it is that my job is to do everything that I can to contribute to the overall performance of the team. And sometimes that's I have a quiet week and I don't make much of a contribution. Sometimes I make more of a contribution. I'm often part of the decision-making process for the team manager and the riders, and sometimes the contribution that I make is critical to the final result. So, that it's a very multifaceted job. I remember, like, one year we were having the breakfast thing in the Intercontinental, and somebody asked the riders, did they use anyone as a psychologist or something like that? And Shane Sweetenham suggested that I was the team psychologist. So there's probably lots of different moving parts in the job, but you know, it's maybe a slightly woolly answer, but I feel that my job is to do everything I can to contribute to the overall result of the team. One of the advantages of having been around for a while is that you know a lot of people, a lot of your FEI colleagues know how you conduct yourself and trust you. And if they're trying to make a difficult decision where no would be very detrimental to the progress of the team, I can be very persuasive to helping them say yes instead of no, because and I would only do it if I really think that I'm confident in what I'm asking them to do. But, you know, if they think a horse is struggling and I tell them that I think it's okay and it will be okay, they'll run with that. And, you know, that's maybe just one example of it.
What's interesting in equestrian sport is often you'll see people that effectively are rivals in a given competition, or they're representing different nations, helping each other, giving advice on a course or on a jump off. And I suppose it's the nature of the industry in that it's become so multinational. You have people from different countries working for different people, being trained by different people. Is there much crossover and I suppose interaction when you were at an event and a championship there as part of Team Ireland? Is there much crossover between your colleagues or athletes from other nations as well?
Starting with colleagues, loads. You know, we all know. We all know what the job entails, and we all know what it feels like to work under the pressure that we work under sometimes. So we're a small group, and we are we're very close to each other, and we would often run things past each other and help each other, and so we're a tight knit enough bunch. In terms of crossover from the riders, it's and I suppose this also applies to the team vets. You know, if I'm in Rotterdam, or if I'm in Rotterdam, I will, if I need a piece of equipment or something that I don't have with me because I'm not at home, I will lean on my Dutch colleague. If I'm in Aachen, I lean on my German colleague, and on you go. Here this week, my colleagues are all leaning on me, and for example, one or two of them stayed for the Nations Cup and have gone home and have sent me messages to ask me would I mind looking after their riders if they need anything over the next day or two. So so there's interaction with the colleagues. We're all very close, and you know, we almost without exception all get on well. And there would be some interaction. The Canadian team are stabled beside us this week, and they've no vet, so I've done quite a bit for them. My brother Connor spends a good bit of time in Canada, so there's a crossover there. So a little bit of crossover with the riders as needed, but a lot of support and knowledge sharing between colleagues.
Okay. As I mentioned, I'm gonna save one or two questions just with time in mind for the Q&A. But just to finish, whenever I interview somebody, whether it's a breeder, a vet, or rider, I always like to get some advice for the younger generations, I suppose the younger people coming through in a person's given space. What piece of advice would you give to younger vets that are coming through in the veterinary world?
I mean, I think it's a really great job, but I think that you have to almost look at it as it's quite vocational. So I think if you're wanting to get up in the morning, go into work, do your day's work, collect your money, and go home at 5 o'clock, do something else. But if it's something that engages you, and there are a lot of sacrifices in it, but if it's something that engages you and you're willing to work hard at it, it's a very rewarding job. But you have to, like, everybody that I know that's good at it and that sticks at it are all durable mentally tough personalities. So it's a great job, but you need to be ready for it, and you need to keep turning up.
Thank you very much. Can you please put your hands together for Marcus Swail? I'm now joined on stage by Floris Van Leuken. Floris is from the Netherlands, sport horse breeder, has been a foal selector, judge, commentator, and has run a sports stable also. And I hope you won't mind me saying this, but when I asked Floris to participate in this, the response was more, well, you know, I'm not a big breeder, or I'm not a big name, or, you know, I'm not kind of the man of the moment. But when you start to actually go through all the different perspectives and roles and ways that Floris has been involved in the industry, I think there's an opportunity to get a lot of different perspectives from the one person. But I also think while there are breeders who breed maybe 10 times the amount of foals you will have in a year, sometimes the challenge is when I interview breeders like that, for some of the breeders who have 1 and 2 and 3 foals in a year, it feels like where they're at is too far away from where you are. And I think what's interesting when you consider all the different roles that I've just mentioned that Floris has performed in the industry, it makes it, I think, extra interesting to know that Floris doesn't have an equestrian background originally. Before your life got completely consumed by horses, you were involved in the travel business. Am I correct?
Yes, you're right, yeah.
So how do you get from the stage of being involved in something sensible like travel to effectively your life being consumed by everything to do with horses? Like, how do you take that step from that to becoming a breeder?
At that time, good evening, everybody. Thanks for the invitation also. In that time, I had my company, and as a hobby, I was a rider. Nothing was breeding, nothing at all. I told you before, in that time, it was the end of the 80s, I think. I saw an advertisement of a stallion, and I was really crazy from that stallion. It was the Holsteiner Cor de la Brière. And my riding mare, my riding horse, I decided to breed with her because my career, everybody said, it's better that you finish. So I did. I did on the 130 level, but my eye was not the best. So I put her in breeding. Was not a success at all because I got a pony from it. And then I thought, okay, I have to do better. And so I'm involved a little bit in the breeding. I visited breeders. I went to Germany. I went to Holstein a lot and tried to find my way. And that's a little bit the start. And the year after, I bought my first broodmare in Zangersheide. Broodmare by Almee. And yeah, then it started with breeding. Afterwards with breeding, not afterwards, but I decided at that time to sell the company, and at that time I started a stable with sport horses. My ex-wife was riding, and that's how it started a little bit in the horse business.
Whether it's a vet, breeder, rider, I'm always interested to know what the people who influenced the early decisions and experiences. Because it's amazing how our lives can be changed by, you know, meeting someone who gives us the time or the guidance or the information in those early years. There was a particular person that you met at the start of your breeding career, and I think they became a close friend and a big influence. Could you talk to me about meeting Alex Karumpis and how that impacted you as a breeder, and what were the main learnings throughout your meeting and your time and your friendship in the horse world?
Okay, as I just said, the first mare I covered was with Cor de la Brière, and at that time he was available on the Studboekzangerzijde in Belgium. Alex Corompis worked there. He was the breeding manager. Okay, we became friends, and we went to shows, to stallion shows. We talked about breeding. Okay, he had a lot of knowledge, and through him, I developed a little bit faster, maybe in breeding than I had to do it on my own.
What was it, and maybe this was to do with Alex, or maybe this was something you sought out by yourself at that stage? And it was interesting in a recent conversation. There's a few things I think have come a bit full circle. You had a really, even though you were in the Netherlands, and I know it's what I'm going to say. It's kind of next door. But what was it about Holstein that drew you so much? Because you spent a lot of those earlier years back and forth to Holstein, but it's also interesting that it seems to be pulling you back again. So what was it?
Now you're going fast.
What was it about Holstein as as an area or as a studbook that really drew you at the time? And I guess what is it that's drawing you back all these years later?
Okay, at that time it was beginning of the 90s. In Holstein, I think that was the studbook in Europe. They had the stallions at that time, Landgraaf, Floort, afterwards Cassini, Corrado, Carthago, also in the 90s. That attracted me, and at that time, from the mare lines, now it's everywhere. You can find everything about the lines, the mother lines. But at that time, there was a lot already on paper from the mother lines in Holstein. The sport results, they had all their numbers, so it was easy to get your information and find the better lines with good sport results. And commercial, but interesting stallions also.
And I won't count the number of years since then, but what do you think it is that's drawing you back now?
Okay, we talked about it, but you're right, because a few weeks ago I went to Holstein again, and every year there are the fall tours, and I didn't do it for a few years. I visited the stallion shows the last years, yes, but I didn't follow it so much. And I liked to see how it is there at the moment. And I liked it, but it's also, okay, I said you're going fast now. It's also a little bit that it's still, and I find it here on the show also, it's still a little bit more traditional breeding. And I'm a little bit older, maybe I'm old-fashioned or grumpy, I don't know what it is, but I like the tradition, and for me, breeding is passion. And I miss it at the moment by a lot of breeders, and it's really commercial at the moment. And I'm not saying it's bad to be commercial, but a lot of new breeders, I mentioned the new breeders, making only commercial decisions to sell the foals as expensive as they can. And for me, I'm saying it's not wrong, it's not bad, but for me it's not breeding. But that's my personal thing. Yeah.
When you started to become a breeder, and in those earlier years, had you a clear goal? And I would be curious to know that a few years later, is that goal still the same? Because, like you said, your motivations are not purely commercial. Obviously, it has to pay or it has to stop. But but it's like we all wanted to make money. But I don't feel that you're setting out to try and breed them in the most commercial way possible. So, what were your goals when you started out? And what would you say your breeding goal or focus is now? Has that changed much in those years?
It didn't change so much, I think, the goals. Okay, every breeder, every goal of the breeder is to breed a good sport horse. And I think the goal is still the same. But for me, breeding is, you have your mare, you know everything about your mare, you're going to find to make a right combination, looking for the stallion, and then you look for confirmation, you look for the canter, okay, the things together, and it's not always working, but you have a goal and to make a try. And that's what I want to say, what I just said. At the moment, it's commercial for auctions, and a lot of breeders, they do embryos, flush, or ICSI, and I'm not against it. But they all choose 5 stallions, Chaco Blue, Hermitage Cologne, United Touch. Okay, we all know. And for me, it's not possible that all that stallions, because they're all different, can fit on the same mare. And okay, that's my opinion. So my goal, okay, is still the same. And I think at this time, that's, yeah, a lot of breeders have not the same goal, and that's the commercial thing. And I'm a little bit worried about it, but that's my opinion.
Obviously, as breeders, we put so much time and thought into how we select our mares, how we make combinations. Then you spend your days wondering if you've done the right thing in studying your foals, and yeah, those decisions on what to keep, what to sell, if you did it right, what you need to change. We all go through these cycles. How did it become that you went from, say, being a breeder, doing your own thing, to then becoming a selector for the auctions? What's the term? Yeah, how did that come about, being a selector? And then when you're viewing other people's foals, either as formerly as a selector for auctions, but also you've been a judge at different competitions and foal championships, even in Ireland a number of years ago. The last time you were in Dublin, I think.
Yeah, right.
So how did that come about? And then when you're looking at other people's foals, what are the first 2 or 3 things that you're looking, jumping foals to make it simple, in jumping foals, the first 2 or 3 things that you're looking for that has to be there?
That has to be there. Okay, yeah, the standard things. First thing, it must be correct. So from confirmation, it must be correct. It must be athletic. Also for me, a jumping foal has to have a functional trot. It's also important, it must move through the body. Canter is important. Okay, and for auctions, you're also looking for special types and pretty foals. Yeah. But I'm not saying that's the most important thing, but for auctions, okay. That,
Because through auction selections for a few years, through the different championships, obviously you're seeing a lot and you're getting a lot of valuable information also as a breeder. You know, you're getting to see the combinations that work, what way stallions are breeding. But the other thing was, apart from what you look like and you looked for in terms of what are the things that you really want to be there, from those 2 roles as a judge and a selector, what are the common mistakes or areas where breeders turn up to a championship or turn up to a selection where they kind of fall short? Because why I'm curious about this is, at the moment there are various foal selections going on in Ireland for different auctions. It's about to start here, where the qualifiers for the foal championship are on. But for you in those roles, obviously you'll remember the good ones, but what were those areas where breeders maybe fell short?
Sorry, for me, there are 2 different things. When you're looking for an auction foal, it's different when you judge foals, because when you judge foals and you make one foal a champion, it doesn't say it's an auction foal. So that for an auction foal, you're looking for the whole package to sell. It must be, there it is again, commercial. Okay, and then everything the mother line must be interesting. There must be a lot of sport in the mother line. As I said, the type, the conformation, everything. When you judge foals and you have super full from movement and body and athletic. But a normal mother line, it can win. For me. But it's not it's not an auction foal. It can be all together, but it's not, for me it's different.
Were there, I suppose what I'm just trying to think of is with the time of year that we're at, are there things that you saw where people would turn up maybe a bit unprepared that you thought you would have really given yourself a better chance if you could have done A, B, and C?
It makes it difficult, but because breeders, they all want to go in an auction. But okay, it changed the last few years. The selections changed. The sport is the most important in the mother line of the foal, and it's difficult to tell some breeders. They don't understand. Just what I said, when you judge foals and the winner and you don't take it for the auction, they don't understand it. They're angry. But I think as a breeder, you have to make a choice also. Will I breed for sport or for myself, or will I breed for an auction? And that are two different things. Because when you use, as example, a young stallion, okay, in auctions, it must be all the TV stallions, all the names we know. When you choose for a young stallion, it's for an auction less interesting, or it brings less money.
It is interesting to think about how when you're trying to pick a foal as a winner of a championship, and you're trying to pick a foal for an auction, it is an unusual situation that those two things are not the same, because the majority of people that are going to an auction, you would hope, want to buy the foal that has the best chance of being the top horse in their sport. But there's a bit of a disconnect. And obviously at a lot of auctions it is, people are chasing, sometimes they're buying the best page, and a lot of these high profile auctions you're seeing foals that have a very impressive page and maybe a less impressive foal. Are there any other trends or that you're seeing, either foals or young horses, any other market trends that you're seeing or hearing at the moment?
Yes. No, I don't want to be, I'm thinking about it, but I don't want to be negative or something, but I just said, but yeah, you see trends, and that's what I just said. The commercial breeding is taking over, and I'm not sure if in the end it's good for the sport. And if you mean a trend, okay, I did the selections, and I saw also mares that they flushed or did ICSI. They have 10 foals a year, and in 2 years, 20 foals. They will all are with a carrier mare. When you see the mare as the foal sister of a famous mare, was on the 160 level, brought also some good horses, but the full sister, where the embryos from, it couldn't jump over a chair, and it was stiff, it was ugly, but nobody sees that mare. And all the foals and the embryos are really expensive sold on auctions. And that's a trend, but I really don't like.
Yeah, that's something even as a breeder, and especially in the earlier years where you're going to different auctions hoping to be educated, it's becoming more and more challenging even to see what combinations are working, because so often you're not ever getting to see the mare. It's just, yeah, it's a foal on a recipient, whether it's ET or ICSI or whatever, it's not, but it is a big challenge. But even if you were a buyer, I think that's also a challenge, because you're relying on impartial information.
Most of them will be disappointed, I think. Of the things I'm talking about, and not in general, but there are more examples as this one.
What's also interesting, and it's not, this conversation's maybe gone a direction that it's not to try and finish all the auctions.
You're in charge.
It's my fault, so I'll take responsibility for it. But when you actually look at it, when you go back through the previous years of auctions and some of the high-profile auctions to see what percentage of those horses reach a high level in sport versus the ones that are not in the auction versus the average, it's not that much more impressive, and it mightn't even be more. I don't know if it's something that you've looked at before.
I didn't check. I must say honestly, I didn't check, but you did it. You checked.
In terms of somebody else that's very, very, very clued in, very knowledgeable, has access to a lot of information, has checked, and it was something that really makes you think about the whole direction that we're going, and what is fetching the high prices, and why. It leaves you more questions than answers, I feel. One of the other roles that you've had is you were involved on the breeding side for, I think, at least one season in Studbrook Zangerscheid, or Zangerscheid, I can't really do it as well.
For 1.5 years I was there. Yeah.
And as a breeder, it's an interesting position to be in, because obviously you're getting to see and work with all the stallions that most of us just see in a catalogue or see on Clip My Horse doing a particular competition. From your time there, are there particular stallions that like really, really made a positive impression on you, that maybe, you know, it's not that you liked or disliked them beforehand, but that you, from working with them in your time there, or the information that you got, or seeing their foals around the stud farm, or from breeders coming in, are there particular ones that really, really stood out that you became like a much bigger fan of from your time working there?
Okay, you're also busy with the young horses, with free jumping. You see a lot, you hear a lot, and when you're busy with free jumping and the young ones, yeah, then you see better ones and worse ones, and then there are some. For me, there were some stallions that were maybe before I was not really enthusiastic, but when you see the offspring and the whole package, then it was more positive, and I used some also, and maybe I did not do before, but then you have some more information.
Are you willing?
Which ones?
Are you willing to give any names?
I knew it.
Yeah,
I can say, okay, Agonix, but we all know I was really enthusiastic. Okay, we had some young ones there, and yeah, they have some special things, and okay, but that I knew a little bit before. But a pleaser that Christian Amann rode on the highest level, the Grand Prix level, didn't breed so much that time, and yeah, I saw some really good foals and young horses. So I used him 2 or 3 times, I think. Yeah, because what I saw, and I gave it a try. Yeah. Okay, and they're now 2 and 1 years old, so we have to see if it's good. But I used him. Yeah.
And I know it's difficult to talk about like specifics and specific stallions, but was there a stallion that you were really impressed with how much they really stamped their offspring?
What do you mean with stamped?
Like that you could really see their influence. You know, sometimes.
But it's a little bit. That's a little bit the same what I just said. Yeah, if you mean by stamped, for me the jumping is important, and then when you see a lot of young ones, you see some things, and yeah, that's a little bit what you mean, I think, with stamped.
Yeah, like sometimes you might have horses that breed jumpers, but maybe a lot of their offspring are quite different. Ones that really make kind of their influence, or you can really see them or spot them, that they really kind of make their mark. I wonder, like, were there any particular stallions that were really dominant in how they bred or made their mark on their offspring?
I can mention one, and he's in sport now with Alman, and it's Durkan. He really stamped his offspring, the types, how they're built, mind. Yeah, that's one.
With him, and I suppose because he's competing here this week, and because there are a few people in the room that have bred to him, is there anything in particular that you think he's really giving? Like, is there something that you saw from all the youngsters during your time there? Is there something in particular that you really think he really adds this?
Okay, at that time we're a few years further now. Yeah, I saw them only free jumping. Now you see them under the saddle, but he makes a lot of same types for me. And the power, yeah, they all have power in jumping.
Something that I meant to mention at the beginning was a few of your more successful homebreds. It's funny how there's quite a few of them have found their way either to Ireland or to Irish riders out of Ireland. So Quality Time that went on Jump Nations Cup and ended up back breeding in Ireland, and a few people I'm sure have used him. Same with Cobra, he won medals at the Young Horse World Championships. He ended up coming back here and breeding before going to the UK. At the moment, I suppose one of the really current ones is Gotcha, that Simon McCarthy, an Irish rider based in the US, is doing. But what I was curious to know, I'm not sure actually, it's something I don't think we've ever discussed about what age Quality Time was when he was younger. Now, I'm also biased to know this information because I have a mare from the family with Alan Waldman there. But I'm curious to know what are your earlier memories of Quality Time and how long did you have him for?
Yeah, I sold him as a foal, so that was only half a year. So okay, and I had to contact with. I sold him as to Team Nijhoff, so I had a good contact, and I heard. Okay, they were enthusiastic. What a little with Quality Time. That's a little bit his strong character. The offspring has it also. Yeah. But I only had him the first half year, so.
Okay, that's something I couldn't remember if we had ever discussed that. But I thought it was interesting. There was a few things that were kind of interesting timing and connections. And then I'm going to bring you on to the last question. So actually, I'm going to tell you the question first and give you a chance to think about the answer.
I know the question. I think.
You know the question. It's the question every interview finishes with. So while you're thinking of your advice for young breeders, there was a few interesting connections or links, not just with your horses coming to Ireland in Quality Time, but then watching the 3-year-old loose jumping. There was a Quality Time won the 3-year-olds this week in the fillies.
I didn't know.
Yeah, owned by a fellow Sligo breeder. Quality Time was ridden by Jeroen Dubbeldam, who Willem was based with and trained with in some of his younger years. And the final one was our Storm this week, was named after you. So I've given you a little bit of time to think. And also, when I started the podcast years and years ago, Floris was one of my earlier guests. I'll be curious to know if that advice is still the same all those years later. So what piece of advice would you offer to younger breeders?
That's the question. I knew, okay, I didn't think about so much. It's a little bit the same. At that time, I said also for young breeders, it's a pity because there are not so many young breeders anymore. Not in Ireland, I don't know, but in Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands, it's getting more difficult. Young breeders, not so interested. But it's a little bit the same. Talk to older breeders, visit them. Don't make your decisions only on stallion shows, but follow the sport. Because on stallion shows, it's also difficult for 3-year-olds with free jumping. If you don't, if you not can be sure what you see, yeah. But get your advices from the older people. That's a little bit my and follow the sport, because I think that's. Yeah, the stallions that are on television, they will get their mares. But there are, for me also, the 6, 7, 8-year-old horses. You can follow them for 3, 4 years. You know more about them, and then give them a chance also. But do your homework.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Something that has been consistent since I started, the earlier years that I started traveling to the Netherlands or traveling to Belgium. I was fortunate to somewhat accidentally meet Floris many years ago at the Young Horse World Championships. and he had extended the invite to come and visit his place, which again, it's very easy to do that and not accept, and I accepted it in the next time. And then it was through one of those visits that Alan Waldman turned up in his car park, and we had the chance to meet Alan, and Floris and Alan were two constants for my earlier trips to the Netherlands. It was a rare trip that I wouldn't go and visit the two of you. I think also, I suppose why I'm saying this is I would like you to take the opportunity, if someone does want to talk to the guys afterwards, is that both of you have been very, very helpful. You will always give the information, you'll always give your time, give your opinions, and it's something that's been very much appreciated. So I've benefited a lot from my friendships with these guys, thanks to that first meeting one night in Lanniken. So it's just to thank you for that, and thank you for giving your time to do this, because I know you weren't jumping at the prospect of coming up and public speaking, but it's very much appreciated. So can we have a round of applause for Floris Van Leuken?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our final guest speaker for tonight, and as I mentioned at the beginning, or for anyone that wasn't here, all the speakers are going to join me back on stage after this session. But firstly, I am looking forward to interviewing a man who has had an incredible week. Can you please put your hands together for Willem Greve? Hi, Willem. So, for last year's event, I had reached out to Willem in the hope that we could get him over to Dublin, and he was busy at the time, and I was really eagerly waiting for entries to come out to know if he was coming to Dublin. And the second the KNHS published the list of riders that were going to be coming over for the Netherlands, I was straight on to Willem, and I was really, really happy that he accepted. Obviously, you don't know what sort of a show somebody's going to have by the time you get to Saturday. They could be in a great mood, or they mightn't be feeling too positive. But it couldn't have worked out much better. If we had to be beaten in the Nations Cup, to be beaten by the Dutch team when Willem was coming to speak, and for him to jump a double clear, it couldn't have put you in a better situation. And as you see, he's straight in his riding gear. He's just been riding some nice 4-year-olds, I'm sure. So I'll be interested to get your perspective on that. I'd firstly like to start with a round of applause for the incredible performances that the Dutch team put in, because it didn't start in ideal fashion. One of your colleagues had a fall just beforehand. It's a very tough thing to, both horse and rider fell. It's a very tough thing to then go in and have to perform in front of that crowd, in that arena, in that atmosphere. And for the rest of you to pull together, come behind and deliver those clear rounds, it was particularly impressive, and it was a well-deserved victory. So we'll have a round of applause for the Dutch team.
Thank you.
It's no more than the other speakers that have been here today. I think it's always interesting when I manage to corner you for a few minutes at a show, or to ask you about something, or some friends here have had the opportunities to pick your brains on particular stallions, I suppose. And I'm sure there was a lot of interest and following in watching you at Grand Dorado here. He's very popular in particular. But sometimes when you speak to a rider, you get the feeling that their main priority is just the horse jumps or the horse doesn't jump. When you get into conversations around the horse's pedigree, how the horse is breeding, what mares he suits, it's a very short conversation. Something that I've really appreciated in the conversations with you over the years is you really, really have given it all a lot of thought, and then the detail that sometimes you can give, or the insights in the stallions, is very, very much appreciated. But similarly to Floris, what I'd like to start off with, just to give people a little bit of background. You have been riding championships since ponies. Looking back through your FEI record, it is very, very rare that there's a championship that you were not involved in or in the mix for? From the time you started doing ponies, juniors, young riders, senior championships, the list is quite impressive. I suppose in your earlier, we'll call it rather than younger, in your earlier years in adult life, you were based for a short number of years with two people in particular that I would like to kind of learn a little bit about your experience there. Henk Noren and Jeroen Dubbeldum. Could you talk about your experience there and how the time with each of those kind of, you know, two prominent individuals, how that shaped your earlier years?
First of all, good evening, everyone. I'm very honored to be here. It's always interesting to talk about sports and breeding because I think that's a mutual interest that we all have. That's the horse. If it's a vet or a breeder or a rider, I think we all have the same goal, and that is that we like a very good horse, and we all need each other in this whole process because we as a rider are nothing without the breeder, and we hope the vet doesn't get too much involved, but sometimes it is how it is. No, but I think we're all here for the same thing, and that's that we are passionate about a sport horse. So that's why I'm very happy that I can be here. Talking a bit about the question you had, Henk Noren and Jeroen Dubbeldum, I think one person is more important, has been more important to me. That's my father, Jan Greve. He's a very passionate breeder, also a veterinarian. I was born at his stud, the Watermolen. And what I learned the most from him is to try to think as a horse, to have your horsemanship and try to, in a natural way, try to understand the horse and try to educate him that he understands you in a good way, and try to also put effort in, try to know the character of a horse and try to improve him. And then old horsemen like David Hopper, who's been a partner, dealing partner for my father for many years, was a very, and still is a very interesting man, a real horseman. And from those men, you learn a lot. At that time, you think, okay, they're just talking. But when you look back and they think, oh yeah, that's what David Hopper said. You have to outsmart them. That was a very good thing what he said. But started with ponies. My first pony Europeans was with an Irish pony called RDS Breeders Rose in '95. Then I did all the ponies, juniors, young riders, Europeans with 7 different horses and ponies, but never with an expensive pony, never with an expensive horse. RDS Breeders Rose it's a familiar story, but it's quite a funny story that the pony was in Sweden with Tanja Torgelsman, and they were looking through Bert Romp, late Bert Romp, he passed away unfortunately. He had a client in Sweden that was looking for a good 5-year-old. I have to say it right. Yeah, they had the pony and they were looking for a 5-year-old, but we didn't have the 5-year-old that suited. And then Theo de Huurne, who lives close by, he had a nice 5-year-old. So my dad swapped 3 2-year-olds for the 5-year-old and swapped the pony for the 5-year-old again. So I had the pony, the girl had the 5-year-old, and Theo de Huurne had 3 2-year-olds. I did the Europeans with the pony. The 5-year-old ended up to be a 160 horse named Harriet, and from the 3 2-year-olds, one was called Harley, a Julio Mariner Farn, who became world champion in Landaken. So with the closed wallet, everybody was happy. So that's how we learned a little bit the business, or that's how I learned a little bit the horsemanship. Then we had a pony through a dealer, Hank Melse. I was always very interested in, first of all, horses, the breeding. I've quite a good memory, so when I was a little kid, I saw all the yearlings and the 2-year-olds. I knew all the breeding by sight, out of my head. Thoroughbred breeding, I went every Sunday to the racetrack, so I was really, really hungry for information. And then we had through Hank Melse, he had a pony, but it was a bit of a bastard. It was a New Forest pony, and he was just very spoiled. And he just actually was fooling the girl. So, I got the pony. I gave him one proper, I really went into him one time that he knew that I was the boss. So we changed his name to Basic Brilliant, because in basics he was very brilliant, but once in a while you had to tell him who was in charge. We did 2 Europeans with him, and he cost 8,000 guilders that time. We sold them for a lot of money to Finland, took a trade-in pony, and I did them in the Europeans the year after. So I just want to say that everything what I've learned from my dad had nothing to do with money. It had nothing to do with spending a lot of money. It just had to do with being interested and putting effort in making a horse better and making a pony better. So as I was finished at school, where I didn't spend the most of the time, I was not so much there. My parents, my mom and my dad, my mom is a dentist, not interested in horses, but she was always very supportive. They said that I should go somewhere else. They say strange eyes. There's a saying in Holland that strange eyes, when you're in a different environment, you learn more. And it's also at that period when you're 18, you don't listen so good to your parents. You need to go out in the world. So then Henk Noren was at that time chef de keep from the Swedish team, 2002 we're talking. And then I went there, 18 years old, with 2 horses from my father, Le Bon and Carandas. And then that was for me a real eye-opener. Henk Noren is extremely disciplined, very organized. And then you must see that you come from your home place where my dad, the stud, 200 horses, yearlings, foals, clinic. It's called the equine all-round, but it was very equine all-round. And with Henk Noren, it was the pinnacle of professionalism. It was like you walk into Real Madrid when you come from the local football club. So from my experience, and that was for me a real eye-opener, that was for me, I felt very good in that professional environment. And then I spent 2.5 years there, learned a lot, saw also a lot of things that I would do different in the way of training and approach to a horse. But I also learned a lot of dedication, hard work. And then after 2.5 years, after a year actually, Henk noticed I'm very at the shows, I want to know which horse is this, which horse is that. So I came a lot of times back from a show and I said, Connor had a nice horse, or that had a nice horse. So Henk thought, he's quite sharp at the show. So in the end, I was more being a scout at the show than a rider, which is okay because I got to learn a lot of people. And then after 2.5 years, I went back home and started off there first with my father and later on my own, my business. So I always had more desire to become independent, to do my own thing, than go work for a boss and make a sport career. I had that time quite good offers to ride for sponsors and horse owners, but I'm quite stubborn and I quite do my own thing. So I was really determined to be on my own and to be independent. So that means that I was very, very hard working for more doing business than focus on the sport career. In those years, I met Family Kennedy from KC down in the south here in Tralee. Mr. Kennedy my dad sold him a few stallions. Then through me, he bought a nice junior horse for his daughter. Then I sold him the stallion Lancelot. And then he gave me the ride of KC Maximum Joe. And that was the first time I rode here in 2007, the Aga Khan. Then I also realized how much the Aga Khan means for the Irish people. So that was then at that time my best horse. But for me, the big change came when I moved to June. Because at my father's place, it's very hectic. So I did actually my own thing. I did my own dealing and my riding, but I could never change the environment of the setup of the facility with all the breeding and the clinic, and it was so hectic. And I was feeling myself very happy in the professional atmosphere at Henk. And then by coincidence, I got to in a good conversation with Jeroen. He said, well, if it's too busy, because he was also once in his career stabled at my dad, then you're always welcome here. And then that was personally a very tough decision to leave my father's stud, because personally I would really disappoint him that I would go away from him. But for me, it was the best decision, because in that way I could develop and become a better rider, and I learned so much from Jeroen. And now my dad understands it very well, and he knows it was also better for me. But that was the best, but the hardest decision I ever made in my life, to leave home. But it was the best one. And then I was 3 years with Jeroen, renting stables there. His former wife helped me with the books and the bills and everything. And actually, that was super nice. I had one price per box, 10, 12 boxes. Ride every day with Jeroen. We became very, very good friends. And if you ride every day with a person like that, then you learn so much about the riding, more about the details and the sport and the management. And then in 2011, I was very fortunate that the property where I am right now came on my path, and I was able to purchase that. And then within the last 15 years, we did a lot of business, buying, selling, breeding, everything, but more trying to focus on producing very talentful young horses, but also sell them. And now I'm finally, after all those years, also in a very luxurious position with the stallions from Team Nijhoff and a horse like Pretty Woman, that I'm also able to have surrounded myself with people that support me, help me with keeping the horses, and go a bit for the sport.
That was something that I was curious to ask you about as well, was with the collaboration of the working relationship with Team Nijhoff, how that started. The other thing that I think is interesting that's linked to that is you did an interview quite a few years ago for a Dutch podcast. And it was at the beginning, and there was one of those questions where they give you like A or B. And it was stallions or mares. And you very quickly said mares. Yet your career has been somewhat like defined. Some of your greatest moments have come with stallions. And a lot of the time, most of the breeders here will know you for your success with stallions, which I thought was interesting that you so quickly answered mares, but so much of your success has been with stallions. How did that collaboration with the Nijhoff family come about?
That goes far back. My father used to have before with Nijhoff, Voltaire, and many other stallions. But it came actually because I live very close to Nijhoff, only, 8-10 minutes. I get along very good with the family. And then the first horse, I think it was Eldorado, they asked me if I wanted to ride for him. Or it was Special de Muse. I think I did. I rode Special, and then Hanno Ellerman left them, and then Henk called if I wanted to give it a go with Eldorado. And then it started a bit. Yeah, and then you spend, you have mutual interest in the breeding. I get along very good with Cameron, the son of Nijhoff. He's a very young, hungry guy, which I like a lot. And then, from there on, it grew. Actually, it got more and more. And we say the knife cuts on two sides. For me, it's you don't get a horse from the quality from highway. You can get it bought. It's hard to get a horse like that. But I'm very good for them to promote the stallions. And we are quite successful. The business part, I have quite good clients in America, so we also do some good business. And on the other side, I'm also not afraid to take the risk to invest in horses, in stallions. And then they are one of the best, if not the best, to promote them with all the big clientele. So that's for me also financial, very interesting. So I think you can say that 1 + 1 is 3 with us.
Through the stallions that you and your family owned, and the stallions that they have owned in particular, you have developed some incredible partnerships over the last few years throughout your career. Which of the horses throughout particularly in your adult life, have taught you the most? Which of the horses throughout your career have you learned the most from, or have taught you the most as a rider?
Caramel. That's for me by far the most special horse in my life. It was a very intelligent horse, very, very, very good horse. But he taught me to listen to a horse. And if you don't feel that the horse is not right, then you have to listen to your horse and to your gut feeling, and don't push a horse further than what at that moment is possible, and then you go in the red, and then it will always backfire on you. That is what I learned from Caramel. Cypria is also an example of a mare that was very, very difficult, but I spent hours and hours on her that she understood me, that I was not against her, that I was trying to be with her. And so there are many, many other horses. But Caramel has been for me very special, but there have been quite a few horses that taught me a lot. Yeah.
What's nice in your international career is that you have gotten to ride several stallions and their offspring, which is quite, it's quite an interesting position to be in. And particularly with the breeding stallions, for as much as you're comfortable to go into, with some of the fathers and sons, like say with Eldorado and Grandorado, the fact that you've ridden both highway, what similarities do you see with them in particular? And what do you think are their main differences?
Well, that's you asked me if you want to go deep into it. I think if you're honest to yourself and to the people that you work with, then you also get along and you get further. Then you also, so about Eldorado. Eldorado is a type. If you go here to Simmons Court Bar and there's a big guy with tattoos and long hair, you give him a beer or you want to fight with him? You give him a beer. You want to be his friend. You want to be that he understands you and that he's not against you. And Eldorado is that kind of a horse. He's very powerful. He's very sensitive, and he needs a lot of work. The horse has a lot of energy. You should not put him away in a box and say, "Oh, he's a lion." You have to. He has to be happy when he sees you, and the horse has a lot of energy, so he needs a lot of work. He was always worked twice a day. We rode him in the morning, lunch in the afternoon, or we rode him in the morning and he went out in the forest in the afternoon, and he went all day in the field. But if you put him in a cage, you lock the door, you put the bar closed, then they start to not dislike you. And Eldorado, the best example is the girls in the stable. It was Daisy, the former girlfriend of the girlfriend of the former rider, Hanno. She's this tall. She can walk him around on a halter. Nothing. He does nothing. But if Ria, when she has to trot him around, it's no problem. But if a guy comes and say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to dominate you. You have to listen to me," then he says, "But I'm stronger than you," and then you have a problem. But that's how he is. But that's something that you have to accept. But if you come to a horse and you straight away bully him or straight away say, then he says, "What?" He comes to you like this, and he's bigger. He's a tall horse. I went once to the ferry to Hickstead, and then we had a control at the customs, and I said, "Are these the horses?" I said, "Yeah, for sure." I said, "But you can go and watch." So the guy, he went and he opened the door, and then Eldorado, he came, but he had nothing but horses, so he closed it. "Okay, you can go." He was no, but that's what makes. If I tell Eldorado every day, "You're an asshole, you're this or that or whatever," he did not. You cannot dominate him and say, "I want you to jump clear today." Then he says, "F you." If I have a good day, we go for it, and he could win. If he had a good day, he can win tomorrow the Grand Prix. But if he had a bad day or was grumpy or he was not in a good mood, you can better put him away, because you can do whatever you want to make him jump better. He will not do it for you. And that's a bit Eldorado. But he did classes and he jumped unbelievable rounds with me. Also, the horse missed a little bit his career, because if I would have had him earlier, you can also build up a bit more partnership. It was like 1.5 years, 2 years. And Highway, he has unbelievable working attitude. He needs work. He's so much energy, and he's a fighter. What's the cartoon with the girl with the two? Hoe noem je dat? Was Pipi Langkous? Hoe heet dat? Yeah, she says, "I think I can do it because I've never done it." He has so much balls, so brave, so much courage, that you have to also be careful with. Because if the moment comes that you think, ooh, I'm trying, but I actually cannot do it, then if you take that away from him, then that spirit, that mentality, so I'm very careful with producing him. He's doing big classes, and then I do him a few smaller classes that it's easier for him. You cannot always push the bottom to go full speed. That's a bit what how Highway is. And Grandorado, people think he's a lot of stallion. He's scary. He's dangerous. It's the sweetest horse. You can put him on the 2-horse next to a mare that's full in heat. He doesn't do anything. He's more shy. And the best you saw yesterday in the Nations Cup in the prize giving, when those guys were, with the parade, then he's fine. He loves it. And then they start the music, and then he got scared, and I just stood still and let him watch. And then he's observing, and he said, "Oh, there's just a few guys in a funny clothes, and they're making music." And then I pet him, and then he goes, and then it's fine. But if you straight away go, then they go like this, and then it's it's harder to get access to their brain. But if you first give him just a split second, and then it's fine. But that you have to learn. And he for sure gives unbelievable jumpers, very talented horses, but they are not for everyone, for sure not. And you have to have time, and you have to put time into it, but then they give a lot back to you. But that's with horses.
With Caramble, and also this is a selfish question because we've had one. What do you think he gave to his offspring the most?
Very good rideability, intelligence, very good balance. And he did not get the chances in the breeding that Eldorado or Hermitage or all those stallions of Grandorado, those big numbers. And that's a pity, because there are a lot of horses in America that got sold as a 5, 6, 7-year-old that do amazing job in America, because they're all super nice to ride and straightforward, and they have a good front technique. He gives the best hunters in the world. Chris Sørensen only wants to breed with Caramble. He has 25 Carambles because they're all nice hunters. The goal is not to breed a hunter, but it's a very nice escape if they're not good enough as a jumper. So in general, he made really nice horses.
A younger stallion that you are the breeder of, as well as the owner of, that I'd just like to touch on, because with the stallions that we've been discussing, unfortunately Caramble had passed away in recent weeks, and the other stallions they're older, they're at the top of their career. Well, Eldorado's retired, but the other ones, Grandorado and Highway, we see them in the biggest international classes here. But looking to the future, I'd like you to talk a little bit about a young horse that I know you're very excited about, that you bred and that you own. And again, back to the Irish connections, recently had a good win with the Irish rider Matt Garrigan, who's working with you now.
Yeah.
Could you talk to us a little bit about On the Spot and what you like about him? And yeah, what are the things that you're seeing so far, even though he's young, but that you like about him?
On the Spot, I don't want to say hallelujah. He's just a very complete horse. He comes from a very good family. He's come from a family from Usselin, the family of Flawless, Pollyann that jumped the Charlotte Platte in Hickstead. And Usselin I sold to Artino Nassis, and then through Arnold Kootstra I bought the Grand Dam of On the Spot, the Mermesmer Céline. We bred it to Caramble, that gave Aileen. We bred it to Cornet, that gave Kathleen, and then with Diamant it gave On the Spot. Super model, super type, super canter, very good brain, careful. Little bit Diamant in the front. You have to be honest about that. He's a little bit Diamant in the front. He's very careful. He has a lot of willingness to work every day, a lot of energy, very good brain. The offspring looks good, and for the rest, time will tell. Because it's hard to tell he's going to jump this or that, but so far, if you teach him something on Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning he remembers it, and that's a very, very good thing.
Okay. Something that I was thinking of in advance of this conversation, and then when you were talking about Jeroen, he's probably someone who is a very good example of this. But in terms of the difference between preparing for a 5-star at the weekend, or preparing for a championship, he is someone that just always seemed to be ready at the perfect moment at the championships. And it's something that I'm curious about. And again, as someone who doesn't ride at all, never mind will ever be in the mix for a championship, how does your preparation change or differ, whether you're preparing for just not a normal, but like a 5-star show, versus you're preparing for a championship?
The thing is, you have to ask yourself the question: where is my main goal? If you have, if you're very consequent, if you want a peak in a championship, and it has nothing to do with preparing, like in preparing, making a horse careful, but in preparing that you want to have the horse to be at his best. That means that he has to have enough jumping power, just so he has enough jumping strength. And if you have a horse, let for example, a horse goes a little bit more left or right, do you jump a class in advance to the championship? Do you allow him to go a little bit left, or are you very consequent? Are you more focused on the fact that he stays straight, that he stays straight at the jump, regardless how the result is, if you're going to clear the fence or not? Or you think, oh, I let him go left and I cleared the jump, I cleared the fence. What's for you at that moment more important, that he stays straight or that you are clear? A lot of people think, clear, good class, we need to win some prize money, and then we'll see what happens then. And Jeroen, he's so consequent with his process to be at the championship at his best, that he stays at that moment so focused on the process of getting 100% right, that he's more focused on keeping the horse straight than on the result. And he's very good at making sure that they have enough jumping power, enough stamina, that they're fit. And then Jos Lansing, who was our former chef de keeper, was also very good at it. And then what does a swimmer do before? What does an athlete do when he goes to the games? They rest the whole day. You don't get the horse in form 10 days before. That's half a year before. And that mental part, Jeroen is the best in. And then at that moment, at the event, you cannot make a riding error. You have to be... I also made a riding error in La Coruña twice, and that cost you a medal or cost you a team medal or whatever. But you cannot allow yourself, and for Jeroen that's like a drug, to be under that pressure, to be at that moment that good. And there he's one of the best in the world. And that is what I taught there. Only the results are with me not as good as with him, but I'll keep trying. So
you've got a few years left in you. Yeah, you've got time. With that in mind, and with us as breeders, obviously the foals that we have next year, most of the mares are hopefully going to be pregnant. With the foals that we have in 2026, we're going to be 2036, or probably the European Championships and the Olympics. I think the average age was 13. So then we're talking 2039 by the time next year's foals are in the mix at that sort of a level.
Yeah.
What's your feeling? Because you're at the top of the sport week in, week out. You're dealing. You have a good understanding of the breeding. What are the changes that you see, if we roll on 10 to 15 years, the changes that you see in the sport that we as breeders need to be thinking about?
I think it's very, very important for a breeder that the horses come with the right people. There are a few factors important in getting a successful horse, or getting a horse in the top sport, because most of the horses are not good enough. But we all dream of having a horse jumping the Aga Khan or whatever. But it's very important that the horses end up with the right people. So I think, and in this country, you guys doing a very good job. But in general, we need to breed more horse people, because I think that's the biggest problem. Where does the horse end up? Who gives time in the horse? Who puts effort in the horse to make the horse, gives the horse enough time to develop, to give him the right mileage? So a part of luck is also a very big factor in that thing. And I think there you have to focus more on than trying, because I think in general, also here, I saw all the young horses a little bit here. You in Ireland, you really raised the bar on the quality of the horses. You really, I think you guys are doing a very good job. The Irish equestrian community has a very big role in global equestrian sport. Not only young riders coming up, junior championships, international business, in Palm Beach, dealers, the sport. You guys are very big players on our market, so I think you're doing a very good job. So all credits for you for that. But I think that in general and in our country, there's lack of good people that do it for passion, and workers that want to do the right job. So I think that's a very important thing that we have to focus on. And the rest, I think, don't be blinded by the auctions and the big prices and the big numbers, but better work together with young guys that want to go to the top and try to work with them together to give the horse the right chance. Be fair to yourself. Don't think that everything that you bred is a superstar. Be realistic, and then try to surround yourself with good people to give the horses that you breed a good chance to make it in the sport. Because all these auctions and embryos auctions and everything, it has nothing to do with reality. Not at all. So don't get blinded by that, because all the people that spend that money for those embryos, the hope cells, those people are very wealthy. They don't even look. And then in 3 years, oh yeah, we bought a few horses. Maybe they're superstars, maybe not. Louis Dam came, my dad at Louis Dam came from a dressage, half jumping mare, from an acteur, Lucky Boy mare. Nobody knew Louis Dam. And then we sold him to England. He comes with Billy Toomey, start breeding, and now everybody talks from Louis Dam. In Ireland, he did an amazing job. So it has to start somewhere. But don't be blinded by all that dollar signs and everything. Stick to your horse, try to make it better, and be honest to yourself and to people around you. And then I think you can, on the long term, be very successful. And you guys are very successful. I think Ireland and Belgium are in the moment big leaders in the sport and breeding. So you guys are doing quite a good job.
And it's very nice to hear. But one person that actually, when you're talking about Irish and the different Irish that are involved, one person that we haven't mentioned yet is actually a key player in your team. Apart from Matt Garrigan, who I mentioned, who's now working for you, it's your groom, Richard Skillen. Am I pronouncing the surname right?
Yeah,
but
Richie.
Your groom, Richie, has been a big part of your success recently.
Yeah, Richie. But Richie, his sister, Ashley, works with Greg Broderick for ages. Richie is an unbelievable worker, unbelievable guy. The sweetest, best guy to have in your team. And again, he comes from a hard-working family. When he has a week off, he goes home, but then he's not laying on the beach, he's milking the cows. They're workers, family. And that's, in the end, those people make the difference. And that's on every aspect and whatever job you do, whatever profession you do, those people make the difference that have drive. And Richard is driven by passion, he's driven for the horses, he does everything for the welfare of the horses. So that's a very big... he plays a very big role in my team, but also other people. But yeah, that's how he's been raised, and that is also, I think, how those people make the difference. That are driven by passion and by thing. And I think we're all sitting here because we are driven by passion. And yeah, Richie is super.
The final question that I'm sure you know is coming, having heard the other ones, you've given a little bit of advice on how the breeders should be thinking and approaching the next few years. Well, what advice would you have for any younger riders that are in the room or going to be listening to the recording of this that would like to achieve a similar level of success in the future?
Stay hungry. Always go. And we lose more than we win in this profession. So, and it's not always easy, don't get me wrong, because sometimes you also think, oh, but okay, now I'm having a good show, maybe tomorrow it's different, but always stay hungry. The doctor said it right. He said, be present or be there or something. Always keep going, keep pushing. And then, and try to find, and that's very important, try to surround yourself with good people. And there are a lot of good people, but treat the people how you would like to be treated yourself. Be correct, be honest, and then I think everything is possible in this world.
Perfect. Can I get a round of applause for Willem, please? It'd be really great if you have a burning question that you don't go home with that question. So who would like to be the first to ask? Good man, David.
I have a question for Willem. United Touch, you produced him, or you did a few years with him there. Did you know he was going to be a freak? Or did you know he was going to win what he's done so far?
In all fairness, if I would keep riding him, he would not have won 1,000 euros. He found his rider. That's the honest truth. I got United. He was bred by the same owner, same family from Cypria. And I got him end of 5. The horse could jump over the building here. I spent hours with him to jump, to control his power so much, to be more knowing where he put his legs. He just made jumps from 6 meters every time. I think to just be more productive with your power, know more where you put your feet, be more aware what you're doing. And I put a lot of time in him. He also jumped good with me. He's a touch slow. He does have blood. It's inside. He has a lot of blood. Scope, there's nothing that he can do. And he also wanted to be careful, but he was a bit, okay, he's a bit big step, big moving. To put that everything together was hard. So looking back, I think he had actually the perfect career, because I put a lot of work in him, making that flat work and that little pole work, and to give him that basic. Then I had made an agreement with the owner that time that he would stay with me until 7-year-old in Lanhaken. Then he went to Bad Bless, and he gave him a lot of mileage. I don't know if he was here, but in Aachen, in Rome, everywhere. Just give him the mileage, not going for the time, just that he's seen everything. His body got time to mature. They never put pressure on him. And then he ended up with Richie. Richie is young, physical, enormously strong, very dominant on a horse on a natural way. And they just are a match made. There's an unbelievable match. And the horse is super attitude, very hard work, willingness to work. And all credits to their team and what they did. And the horse is a freak, but he's not a freak for every mare. And that's what the breeders have to know. And that's what Floris is meaning. That's what Floris means with that not every mare suits with United Touch, and not every mare suits with Hermitage Cologne. And if you have a mare with a very good front technique and you say, I would like to have some diamant blood, you can take on the spot. But that's what he means. They all breeding commercial, that everything, If you look at Azur from McLean, you would never breed her with United Touch, in my opinion. 88,000 or 80,000 for an embryo. Kook. So it has nothing to do with a breeding philosophy or with an idea that you think, what are the pluses and the minuses of my mare and the stallion? And that's has nothing to do with breeding with your gut. It's breeding with your wallet. And that's a very, very difficult thing.
And do you think the inbreeding is what caused him to become such a freak? But also, what are your thoughts on? Because like I hear his semen is very bad. Like it's only for ICSI, or do you think what do you think of the inbreeding aspect to him?
If you look at his family, then he's. I don't say, but he's a bit wobbly. We can say that he's a bit from behind. Cypria was the same. Deauville, Diamant Lux was the same. Classic Touch, his grand-dam was really hot, extreme. But what they all had, extreme, a lot of scope. A lot of scope, massive scope. And brave, courage. So that are very good aspects to be a super horse. Mm-hmm. But look at your mare, you think it can suit, and then you get a better horse.
Thank you.
But not only United is a freak, Richie is also a freak. So,
maybe 2 questions for Marcus. Just you mentioned chips at the start. So when should you be taking one out, and when is it maybe better to leave it in? Maybe that's first, and then maybe for both of our continental visitors, and maybe we're seeing this a little bit more in the eventing rather than show jumping, is the younger stallions on the continent, are they less likely to, and the lack of blood on the page, are they less likely to go to the fence? Is that becoming more of a problem? And is that going to be more difficult for riders, especially the amateur ones, into the future? Are your animals becoming that little bit colder?
Okay. So I mean, I suppose the premise of the question is not all chips are equal, and that's fair comment. So, like, how do you know which ones not to get too excited about and leave them there, and which ones you should be more proactive with? And I think that it's really just because of the practical outcomes. So if you said to me, okay, so you have a horse, it needs to have a chip somewhere, where do you want it? It would be at the back of a hind fetlock. Why is that? Because they rarely give trouble, and because of that, people often leave them there, and they're well tolerated at resale. If you put it the other way around and said, okay, so where do you really not want one? It would probably be a large fragment in a coffin joint. Why is that? Because coffin joint horses, like, foot pain is an occupational hazard of a sport horse, and horses' feet and their coffin joints have to work hard in this sport. And anything that so if you have a large fragment in a coffin joint, it invites the wider question, why get excited about any chip anywhere? It's because they will cause ongoing damage over a period of time to the joint and accelerate degenerative changes in that joint. So, a horse with a large fragment in a coffin joint, it's very likely to give trouble at some stage, whereas the opposite is true for the first example, a chip at the back of a hind fetlock. And you're going to have everything in between then. So I think that the trick is to get good advice, but I think that not all chips are equal, and some of them you need to get a bit more excited about than others.
The second question is just in terms of the breeding going forward. We're breeding more and more high energy horses, more reactive horses, but are they going actually forward? Is the rider becoming a bigger part of the partnership as our breeding is evolving and developing?
I think we're trying to breed more reactive horses, a higher level of fine tuning horses, that they are sharper in their reactions, everything, and that also demands a better, finer rider. I don't know if that little bit is the question or the answer what you were hoping for. What expect? I don't really understand, especially your question, to be honest. In the lack of thoroughbred. My father is always a very promoter of being of thoroughbreds. He's always been very high on using thoroughbreds, but I think the blood what the horses have in themselves nowadays, we don't need a lot of thoroughbred. I don't think that's. First of all, I don't think it's necessary, and you don't get any breeder to breed with a thoroughbred. No chance, because it's not commercial. But I do think it's important that the willingness to work every day, and that's the power, the energy every day. What can I do for you? That is what we need every day, and that's very important that we don't lose it. So I agree with you that we have to be aware of that we don't lose that. But I don't think that we have too cold horses. Sorry.
Can I just add something to the first part of the question as well, Pat? It might be worth saying that, any time that you're setting about removing a chip from a horse, it's going to cost you money. And of course, people say, well, that's going to cost me €1,500 or €2,000, or, and back to the thing we were talking about earlier on, you always have to justify the benefits of spending the money against what you get for it. But what I sometimes say to people is the way that you have to think of it, when you're removing the right chips, I'm going to call it, is you need to remember that in a way you're adding value to the horse. So it's going to cost you money, but it's going to do two things. It's going to reduce the risk of damage to that horse's joint in the medium to long term, and it's going to make selling the horse, it's going to make the horse more marketable. So that would be two advantages in your decision making process.
To add on Marcus's answer, the worst thing there is to judge a horse only on his x-rays. You should look, how is the horse, how is the conformation, how is his feet, how is he moving. If you have him in work, I also have had a few horses with chips. I had a mare called Perpetua, Lux Cassini out of Weiss Dame. She had a cyst in her coffin. A mouse could go through. It was the biggest hole on an x-ray you can ever see. And she won 5-star Grand Prix. She won the Dublin Stakes here. Commercial-wise, it's not what Marcus says. It increases. You get more value for your horse when you take all the chips out. But you always should look at the horse. And that's also what makes the vet life difficult. If they have to judge a set of x-rays to say, yeah, you can buy this horse or not, because they cannot see the horse moving. And in the end, we should always look at the horse first and then to the x-rays, is my opinion. I don't know if you agree, but...
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that a horse's... I had to give a presentation at the British Equine Veterinary Association conference about 2 years ago on interpreting x-rays in sound horses. I think that the most important point on that is that you have to interpret x-rays in light of what the horse has told you. And it reminds me of I've told this anecdote a couple of times, so I apologize if some of you have heard it before, but there was an American professional eventer that rang me one time to ask me to do a pre-purchase on a horse. And he was quite a colourful character, and I mean, I'd never spoken to him before, but in spite of the fact we had never spoken before and that I didn't know him, he insisted in calling me darling. And he told me about the horse and what he liked about it, and maybe, sometimes people will have a feeling about something they want you to pay attention to during the pre-purchase exam. And then when he was finishing, he told me what x-ray, what imaging he wanted, and when he was finishing, he said, and remember, darling, when you're looking at those x-rays, remember that I'm riding the horse, I'm not riding the x-rays. And I thought that was a very good thing to say. I remembered that. So
it would actually be interesting to put all the horses, nobody would do it, that jump tomorrow the Grand Prix, just make a set of x-rays. Because in the end, it's all about here, the heart. Are they willing to suffer? Because they also sometimes feel a little bit this or that. And one is whining and is already half limping. And the other one think, Eldorado, he had one time an accident on the truck. He was a bad traveler. He had a hole in his Achilles on the back of his hock, but big. And they did a flexion test, and he was, and they let loose, and boom, he was sound. So hardy horse for himself. And in the end, that's what you need in the sport. So if a stallion is jumping in the big sport, he's already actually a sound horse. Because if they're not sound, they're not jumping those classes week in, week out.
A question for Willem and Marcus. We see more and more horses jumping at the top level barefoot. Do you see a correlation through a horse's career of less lameness if they're barefoot through the career?
I think it's also a little bit of hype, to be honest. I think it's good when a horse better barefoot than bad shoeing. And there's a lot of blacksmiths that make a lot of cinema and a big... But if you stay just normal how the foot is, stay close to nature and just give it normal shoeing, shoeing is fine. But you see, if you look at the vet check, the most unbelievable high-tech shoeing that you think that cannot be comfortable for the horse. But that's, if you stay close to the horse, close to nature, shoeing is fine. And the barefoot, King Edward's was with shoes a very good horse, and Julian APR was also very fast with shoes. So I think it's also a little bit of fashion. But without shoes, it's for sure better than bad shoeing.
I'm the same as Willem in that. I mean, I hate complicated stuff. I mean, I look at some of the stuff that's on some of the horses' feet, and I feel like it's just farriers trying to impress people or something like that. But I mean, on the barefoot thing, how long have you got? I mean, it was actually in Rotterdam about 3 or 4 years ago. I went up to the horse inspection, and a horse. It was at a time when there were not very many horses barefoot, and a horse came barefoot, and then another one came, and then another one came, and I said to somebody, "What's the story with all these horses coming with no shoes?" And that was the start of what you said, the fashion. And then you look at them trotting up and down, and you think that horse looks as if he could do with a pair of shoes, you know. And then a couple of years ago, 2 years ago when we won in Aachen, actually, the Swedes all came, and of course they all had to put shoes on their horses, and they jumped 4 clear rounds in the first round with shoes on. So like even Peter Fredrickson, I think, was 4th, and he went in. He didn't have to go in, but he also went in, and they jumped 4 clear rounds. And I thought, okay, that's the end of it. The Swedes will stop talking about jumping barefoot. But unfortunately, they went in the second round and wrecked the place. So that ruined my theory. But I think, all joking aside, I think that there are some horses that suit being barefoot, and there could be some horses also that there could be maybe potentially horses that have had previous injuries in their feet where it could be protective. But I think that my opinion is that it suits some, but it doesn't suit more.
I have a question for you both, because I totally agree what you told about X-rays and Grand Prix horses. But now you're both talking about Grand Prix horses. Tomorrow look at the X-rays. But as a breeder, when I want to sell a young horse, a 5 or a 6-year-olds, there is something with the X-rays. For me, it's not to sell, or for less and less money. Okay, when the horse is on the 160 level, then it's no problem anymore. But I got another opinion from the doctor for a young horse.
When you have bad X-rays or things on the X-rays, every horse dealer is trying to rip you off and say the horse is worth nothing. It all depends. If the horse jumps really well and is a very good horse, I'm not afraid to keep them or to even buy them. But it all has to be a little bit in balance, because when they're 8 and 9 and you have a record that he's been showing all the time, then you also can convince a doctor to say, listen, this is his show record, that he's never been lame. Then if Marcus comes to vet it, then he also get the confidence, okay, I can stand behind the soundness of the horse, he's hardy enough. But then you have to be patient and wait 4 or 5 years with all the expenses and all the risks that you have. And that's why you see many horses from now Eastern countries, or before they went to sold to England for normal money. There are a lot of Dutch bred horses jumping very good in England that were sold for normal money because of the X-rays. So, but that's all how long is your breath, and how long you are willing to put money in that horse to wait until he jumps the big classes. But most of the horses are not good enough to jump the big classes, so they go into the dealing circuit, and then you get not so much money. That's a bit my opinion. I bought a very good 6-year-old in Belgium, very sound horse. Chips all of these hocks. It's a little bit of risk, but if the horse stays sound and is working good, it's going to be a very good horse when you're 2 years further, and then somebody will buy him because it's a very nice horse and a good jumper. But it all depends also a bit on the quality of the horse and how long you want to wait.
Yeah, that's back to that thing that I was saying, that. So this presentation that I was telling you about that I gave at the British conference, you know, the point that I started with was that an X-ray is not a thing in isolation. What you were saying, where you just look, it's not an image on a screen. There's a lot of information attached to it. So, you know, it belongs to a horse, and the horse is a certain age. It's sound, it's not that sound, it's jumped at a certain level. And I actually opened that conference with X-rays, 5-year-old Connemara pony that had 2 huge stifle cysts. And I said, this pony came to me as a 5-year-old, and someone that I used to ride with in ponies actually was buying it for their kid, and I told her not to buy it. And it went a little bit this way and a little bit that way. And as a 9-year-old, another Irish rider, Kelly Allen, who's out in Germany now, won the individual gold medal at the European Championships with this pony. And then the pony went to, I'm going to stop now because I'll start giving too much information out about the pony. But the point that I'm going to make is that it actually came around when the pony was like 12 or 13, and it came back. A client of mine rang me one day and said, I'm thinking of buying this pony. What do you think? And I thought, I know a bit about that one. And so it came to me to be vetted. But now, the first time it was 4 or 5 and hadn't done anything. But now it was 12, and it had already demonstrated that it can live with these things. So the first time, it's if the same thing happened to me tomorrow, I would make the same decision. There's too much risk with the first pony, but the second time round, the pony has already demonstrated that it can live with that, and then the first one is still an easy decision for me, but the second one is also an easy decision for me. And you were saying about your horse that had the huge cyst in its coffin joint, and I think that's also an interesting observation. But the problem with those coffin joint cysts is they're absolutely fine until they're not, and sometimes horses live their entire athletic career with them. But the thing that people don't see, we see the ones that go, as a profession, we see the ones that go wrong. And if you have a big cyst in a coffin joint and it goes wrong, you're in a lot of trouble with that horse, So that's the balance. That's the tightrope that we have to walk every day. It's all right for you sitting up on them.
I think one more thing about the cooperation and the partnership, basically, and the trust that you have also with vets, and on the long term, that they also, when I sell quite a lot to America, and then normally always the same vets come to see the horses at my place. And if they vet 20 horses at my place and all 20, let's say 18 do well, and they are how they are at that moment that they've seen them and they're doing well, then on the long term you get sort of trust with each other, and you tell each other how it is. Because the vet, when he goes tomorrow to vet a horse, he knows that that person would like him to say, okay, the horse is sound, the deal goes through. But he has to make at that moment a very important decision for both parties. And it's very important that the buyer and the seller are always supportive to the vet, because nowadays it's more fashion that the vet says, yeah, he has this and that, and that and that. But, and then he leaves it, they leave the decision at the end to the buyer and the seller, because this vet, the responsibility that they have is so high that it's very hard to say, okay, go and buy it. Which I understand that they say they take a little bit. Is it true or not?
Not for me.
No, but in general, you see that a lot.
Yeah, I think there's slightly a cultural difference with that. In Ireland, we have a veterinary certificate where in the end you give an opinion. And my feeling is that the reason why the person has asked me to examine the horse is because they want me to tell them what I think, So you won't find me sitting on the fence. I'll tell you what I think. But you're quite right. The Americans, when I was given this talk, which I seem to be referring to a lot, I do a good bit of talking about pre-purchase stuff around the place. And when I was doing, it might have been that one or it might have been another one, I called a number of my colleagues, American, Belgian, Dutch, French, Australian, whatever, and there was quite a difference. And most of them, the Americans, for example, in particular, they say they never give an opinion on anything. They make the examination, they say what the findings are, say what they maybe think the risk with the findings are, but they won't say do you buy it or don't buy it. Whereas I'll tell you what I think, rightly or wrongly.
Funny, I tell one anecdote. I had one mare. My vet said, don't touch it. A Vigo mare, good mare, don't touch it. It had everything you can imagine, but it was a very good jumper. So I bought it. And then I had a client, he tried it, he loved it. I said, but the vetting is not good, it's not bad, it's terrible. It's worse than worse. I made it even sound worse than it was. So I sent it, and I know his vet, the guy has quite a big ego. I said, but the mare is clinically sound, but terrible. And he said, well, it's actually not so bad. But I presented it to him that it was the worst of the worst. And he said, I think I can keep the horse going. And then in the end, the guy bought the horse and they were very happy with it and it went fine. But if I told them don't buy it because the x-rays are bad, I had no deal. But it's also how you present it.
Yeah, I'll add to that as well. I always say it's part of fun. I alluded to it earlier on about doing things in a professional way. I think that it's how you present it is very important, and you know it's if you want to navigate your way to a successful sale, it's important to. No one likes finding out risks and problems very near the end when you have to pay the money. It's much better to front load all the information the way Willem's talking about there, where you know if there are issues, you should know them and you should be able to present them to the person at the front of the deal, because then you know the next thing the horse will come to me, I'll examine it, I'll be pleased with the clinical exam, and it'll have this issue in the x-ray, and I'll say to them it has this issue in the x-ray, and then they'll say, yeah, but I kind of already knew about that, so it's not such a big deal. Whereas if it's the first time for them to hear about this issue, they say, oh, I have to pay for the horse tomorrow, so what does that mean? And you know, so I think be professional, understand what it's up to you to understand what you're marketing and to present it in as good a way as possible.
One more thing that's a useful exercise to do if you haven't already done it, looking around the room, as well as the knowledge that we have on stage, there are some incredibly capable, knowledgeable people around the room in their spaces. We have people that have been judging here for the week. We have people that have bought and sold some of the best horses in the world, ridden championships. Make sure that before you get up and leave, you've introduced yourself to the person left or right of you, because there's also a lot of good contacts here as well. The fact that we're at 9 o'clock is a reflection on how this group of people have shown up this year and the generosity that they have given their time and their information in. Can I please have a round of applause for Rebecca, Willem, Marcus, and Floris.